The freight station on Nexus 7 was a grimy place where honest work met desperate survival. Kevin wiped the sweat from his brow, his calloused hands aching from another 14-hour shift loading cargo containers. The pay was barely enough to keep his small quarters heated, but it was honest work, and that mattered to him. He was heading back to his cramped apartment when he heard it, a small frightened whimper coming from behind a stack of discarded fuel cells. Kevin paused, his instincts telling him to keep walking. On stations like these, getting involved in other people's business was a quick way to end up in trouble. But the sound came again, weaker this time, and he couldn't ignore it. Behind the fuel cells, huddled in the shadows, was a small alien child. She couldn't have been more than 5 cycles old, her pale blue skin marked with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Her large, luminous eyes were filled with tears, and her small body trembled with fear. "Hey there, little one," Kevin said softly, crouching down to her level. "Are you lost?" The child looked at him with such profound sadness that his heart ached. She nodded slowly, clutching a torn piece of fabric that might have once been part of elegant clothing. "Where are your parents?" Kevin asked, glancing around the deserted alley. No one came looking. No one seemed to care. The girl's lip quivered, and she whispered something in a language he didn't understand. But he didn't need translation to recognize fear and hunger when he saw it. Kevin sighed. He had barely enough credits for himself, but he couldn't leave a child alone in this place. The station's lower levels were dangerous, especially for someone small and defenseless. "All right," he said, extending his hand. "Come on. Let's get you something to eat." The child hesitated, then placed her tiny hand in his. Her skin was cold to the touch. Over the next 3 days, Kevin did everything he could for the little alien girl. He learned her name was Daisy, or at least that was the closest human approximation of the melodic sounds she made. He shared his meager rations with her, gave her his only blanket when she shivered at night, and tried to find anyone who might be looking for a lost child. But the station authorities were useless, more interested in extorting bribes than actually helping. The few inquiries Kevin made led nowhere, so he cared for Daisy himself. He taught her simple human words, and she taught him to laugh again, something he hadn't done in years. Her innocent joy at the smallest things reminded him why he'd left Earth in the first place, searching for meaning among the stars. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Kevin woke to find his quarters surrounded by ships. Not just any ships, massive warships that made the entire station shake with their proximity. Armored soldiers in technology far beyond anything he'd ever seen lined the corridors, their weapons at the ready. Terror gripped his heart. Had he unknowingly harbored some criminal's child? Was he about to be arrested, or worse? Then she entered his quarters. The woman was tall, regal, and radiated a presence that made the air itself seem to bow. Her skin bore the same blue hue and silver patterns as Daisy's, but more intricate, more commanding. She wore robes that seemed woven from starlight itself, and a crown of crystallized energy floated above her head. Behind her, an entire battalion of elite guards stood at attention. "You are Kevin?" Her voice was like music and thunder combined. "Yes," he stammered, unconsciously stepping in front of Daisy, who had just woken up. The woman's eyes, so similar to Daisy's, filled with tears. "You protected my daughter." "Your daughter?" Kevin's mind reeled. "I am Empress Telestara of the Zetharian sovereignty," the woman said, her voice breaking slightly. "We rule over 2,000 systems, command fleets that number in the millions, and our word shapes the fate of half this universe." She knelt down, spreading her arms as Daisy ran to her, crying with joy. But none of that mattered when my precious child was taken from me by traitors within my own court. Kevin watched the reunion, his heart both soaring and sinking. Of course, the child he'd helped would be royalty. Empress Telestara stood, Daisy clinging to her, and turned to face Kevin. Her expression was unreadable. "My intelligence network tracked her here. We searched every corner of this station. Do you know what we found?" Kevin shook his head, afraid to speak. "We found that only one person helped her. One human working a labor job with barely enough resources to survive himself." Her eyes blazed with emotion. "You shared your food when you were hungry. You gave your blanket when you were cold. You protected her when you had no obligation to do so." "She was a child," Kevin said simply. "Anyone would have—" "No," the Empress interrupted sharply. "They wouldn't have. Dozens of beings passed her by. Station security ignored our inquiries. Even those with wealth and power did nothing. She stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. But you with nothing gave everything. Tears streamed down her face. How does one repay a debt of a saved child? How does an empress thank someone who values life over convenience? Kevin looked at little Daisy, who was smiling at him with those luminous eyes. I don't want payment, he said. I just wanted to help. The empress laughed, a sound of pure, genuine joy. Of course you don't. That's precisely why you'll receive it anyway. She gestured to her guards. Kevin of Earth, from this day forward, you are under the protection of the Zetharian sovereignty. You will want for nothing. Any desire, any dream you've ever had, consider it granted. I don't understand, Kevin whispered. You showed kindness when the universe showed none, Empress Celestara said. Humanity has this remarkable quality, this stubborn insistence on compassion even in darkness. My people will remember this. I will remember this, she smiled. And my daughter will never forget the human who kept her safe when she was alone and afraid. Little Daisy waved at him, whispering, Thank you, Kevin. As the Empress and her guards prepared to leave, taking Daisy with them, Celestara turned one last time. The universe will know what you did here, and when they think of humans, they will remember that when it mattered most, one of you chose kindness. Kevin stood in his tiny quarters, watching through the viewport as the magnificent fleet departed, and for the first time in years he smiled. He hadn't saved a child to gain favor with an empress. He'd done it because it was right, and perhaps he thought that was the most human thing of all.